Steve, of course, we heard on Wednesday that President Barack Obama had used the Antiquities Act to designate the 12th, or use it the 12th time to designate a new national monument in New Mexico. A huge deal. I mean, almost 500,000 acres. Your place is right within that. Tell me what the situation has been for you this week.
Well, emotionally, I think we're all drained. Those of us who have faced this fight for 8 years, we had hoped that we could at least force it into a legislative process and conclude it that way rather than a presidential proclamation. We simply lose all controls when that happens.
And so for you and your ranching operation, what impact do you see this having?
Well, only about 40% of our ranch actually is within the footprint of the nearly 600,000-acre national monument. But there was no effort to establish administrative boundaries in the monument that reflect our pasture demarcations, and hence when any of the monument is impacted on us, 100% of our ranches are affected. And this impacts 95 families directly and about 10,000 head of cattle, which is a huge deal in our area on the border in southern New Mexico.
And so, Steve, I'm trying to imagine if this was our place and 40% of it was now something that had to be completely different as far as management goes. Is this something you guys can sustain?
Well, we don't know the full impact until the management plan is done, and that may take 4 years. I have been personally told by BLM that a grandmother in Miami Beach will have as much impact on the management plan as I will. This will be forced through a public scoping process, and this will be dominated by the conservative green organizations. We fear for our future.
Steve, with that, do you have children that you're hoping to bring to the place that you have to fear for theirs as well?
Well, we have, in our district, in our grazing district, 17% of the operations have a steward, a young steward, standing in the wings. This whole effort to bring young stewards into our industry has been difficult. We cannot promise them a future. We already operate under federal guidelines that have eliminated our opportunities for parallel industries. We suffer like the rest of the West in that our attrition on cattle numbers is running at a consistent 1% a year. And over the last 60 years, we've lost 60% of the cattle numbers in the West. We reflect that same trend. Our young folks cannot expect an opportunity in our industry.
Now, Steve, when we talked before, you said you've been fighting this for 8 years. So kind of how did this come about that you guys knew that this could be a problem coming down the road?
Well, this was pushed by the New Mexico Wilderness Alliance. And that New Mexico Wilderness Alliance certainly comes out of the Greater Wilderness umbrella and even has Earth First footprints on it. And the first effort was pushed through then Senator Pete Domenici, our senior senator at that time, with this idea that the Oregon mountains needed to be preserved. And it's gone through a number of iterations when Congressman Skeen, even prior to that, suggested we should consider a national conservation area. That was rejected because of the relative insignificant footprint. But the effort was picked up following Senator Domenici's retirement by then Senior Senator Jeff Bingaman from New Mexico. And we have fought this thing actively since that time. There have been 4 legislative actions. Of course, the latest one, S. 1805, which we had liked to have seen to fruition in a legislative process, was kicked aside when President Obama signed his presidential proclamation. So we have spent an unbelievable amount of time, much more time than we could afford for our businesses over the last 8 years.
Now, I know that Representative Rob Bishop from Utah has written a letter asking that this designation get pulled back. But how can we help? How can the rest of the West that understand the problem help? What do you guys need?
Well, what we're recommending to the rest of the West is that you need to look at us as the likely end game if you don't get your act together. We are operating under FLPMA, Federal Lands Policy and Management Act. These are not Forest Service lands. These are BLM lands. And in FLPMA, you're going to get familiar with it. You're going to have to bring your land use plans up to snuff. You're going to have to indicate in those land use plans that nothing gets done without local approval and state approval, or you're going to get swept aside. FLPMA has been commandeered by the environmental groups, and they have basically made themselves proxy of that local governance. You know, we don't see these things coming. These things are orchestrated and conceptualized elsewhere, and we finally see it in the Federal Register. We've got to take an active part because they're out to get us.
Well, that is very, very well put. Is there anything else here, Steve, that we didn't cover that you think is important? Well,
just the absolute destruction of customs and culture in our heritage industries should be appalling to all of us. We're walking around in a haze. We don't know how we proceed. Most of us have debt on these properties still. We've got private lands embedded in this debacle. We're told those private lands, no problem. Well, yeah, those private lands, problem. Those represent our workout, and we'll see acceleration of developments within the footprint. This is a mess. It certainly isn't what the founders had in mind when the matter of public lands was discussed. This thing's been hijacked. We are the latest victims of this whole deal.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for talking with us today. And I'm going to keep your number. And as this goes forward, if there's anything that you want to get the word out about, just let us know as well.
Thank you very much. Haylie.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.